Hello and welcome to Giant Mess, a super sloppy sports and entertainment podcast that covers Giants football, Mets baseball, movies, and TV shows. I'm your host, the real cinch, Neal Lynch. On today's episode, we'll be reviewing, recapping, and reacting to James Gunn's Superman film. Came out in 2025. So, without further ado, let's get it started up in here. All right, Superman 2025. This is the first film in the DC universe. James Gunn's DC universe, the DCEU, DC Extended Universe, is no more. There are certain remnants from the DCEU that are carrying over to the DCU. James Gunn obviously named co-chairs of DC Studios with Peter Safran. And so this is a reboot of the Superman film series as they moved away from Henry Cavill, brought in David Corenswet, and it's a labor of love. And it's reflected in the final movie. I mean, I saw this in the theater in July, and I wasn't blown away. I didn't come away from it being like, this is the best movie of the year, but it sits with you, and it definitely resonates with you. And then I rewatched it on HBO Max in September, and, so I could take some more notes and just be a little more diligent about this review. And it grew on me. And to this day, I find myself saying, I'm a punk rocker, yes I am. I say it like once a day. It's just it's a little earworm that kind of burrows in there. It's the first film in DCU's Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters. James Gunn Superman is the first Superman film since Superman Returns, which came out in 2006 to utilize John Williams' main theme from Superman 78 as the character's main leitmotif in the film's score. But I think that was a major oversight in the Superman movies that have been released in between these two, Superman Returns in 2006 and Superman in 2025. It's just so historically tied and ingrained in our brains to have that theme song play when Superman's on screen. So to not have it feels foreign when you're watching Superman. It doesn't pop up in some form or fashion because it makes you, it gives you the feels, dude. It makes you feel things. Nostalgia has such great value to us. I really think James Gunn did a phenomenal job of paying homage to not just the cinematic universe, but also to the comic book universe and just all the various facets and intricacies and details that some well-known and some not as well-known that he pulled to the forefront, or at least incorporated more and integrated more. It's just the level of thought and, like I said, paying homage and nodding to all the things that got us here. He really has built a world any Superman fan can appreciate, especially the diehards. So the ability to take what's so great about the movies, previous movies and installments and versions, integrate that along with the great world building details from the comics, you get a fully fleshed out world and universe that Snyder had on Superman in Man of Steel, where it's like the world is dour and grim and dark, and I think the studios probably thought that was the right approach considering what Nolan did with Batman. The difference is Batman's known for operating in the dark. He's a grim, morose motherfucker. Like Bruce Wayne and Batman he's draped in crepe, dude. He's depressed. It's a very black and gray and that kind of atmosphere and tone that Matt Reeves captured very well in The Batman that came out in 2022. Superman's not that, but you can see with James Gunn Superman, it's very colorful. Like there's a lot of colors that pop. It's feels almost like a comic book in a lot of ways with the amount of colors and the pop that it has. It's vibrant, right? And that's the feeling that you want to get when you think of or see or hear or experience Superman. It's the triumphant horns and the bold blues and the piercing reds and the shiny yellows, and it's colorful and it's pop because that's Superman's general disposition and mindset and personality. He is colorful and he's, for the most part, positive. He sees the good in people. He sees the humanity. Batman's the opposite of that. He sees the worst. He has trust issues, respectfully, and he's gone the other route. So you can go the Batman route or the Superman route. As a kid, I was drawn to Superman. How could you not be? Batman, as I got older, I gravitated more towards Batman because it was like, loss of innocence, shame, guilt, all the negative emotions that kind of draw you to Batman. And, you go through your emo phase. And it's just like Batman's there for you to relate. Who could relate? Superman embodies the spirit of looking through rose-colored glasses, optimistic, positive, seeing the good in people. And so that the color scheme makes more sense. The music was interesting as well because, we'll talk about this with Peacemaker, but with Peacemaker, Gunn decided to go with the glam rock, hair metal, 80s rock as the anthem or soundtrack for Peacemaker because that fits more with Peacemaker's personality. With Superman, he made an interesting choice where it's like he decided to go with punk rock. And you don't normally associate Superman with punk rock. And I think that might have turned some people off. It might have been like, I don't like this new approach, but I kind of dug it. And he defends it, or at least explains it within the context of the movie, which we'll get to. So I love the color scheme. Interesting choice of music that they definitely incorporate the old score in a new way, but then they introduce like this punk rock type angle that, is not as far-fetched as that any naysayers might think. I don't see that as a stretch. And it makes sense, and he makes it make sense in the movie. So I definitely appreciated that. In this movie, Superman must reconcile his alien Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing as reporter Clark Kent. He is the embodiment of truth, justice, and the human way as he finds himself in a world that views these traits, qualities as old-fashioned. Now, it used to be truth, justice, and the American way. But my thoughts on that, well, I can see why they went that route because they want Superman to be less of an American figurehead and more of a global representative. He came to Earth, we thought, to protect us, to serve us, to help us, to show us the light, to help us get to that better place. And so it shouldn't be just confined to just America. So I understand why they peeled back on that and they went with the human way because, after all, we're all human. We're all dancers. Whatever the expression goes, we're all human, and we all want to not see the world end. And so it's going to take a global effort, and we need everyone on board if we're going to make this thing work, this whole thing called humanity, right? It's not just America doing its thing. It needs to be Moravia and Jahanpur and, all the fictional countries they got going on in this movie. Superman faces unintended consequences after he intervenes in an international conflict between Moravia and Jahanpur, orchestrated by billionaire Lex Luthor, played by Nicholas Hoult. Superman must win back public support with the help of his reporter and superhero colleagues. So unlike the dour tone established by Zack Snyder, James Gunn opted to channel the hopefulness and idealism associated with the title character, but also to deal with the ramifications of those personality traits in a world that is far from utopian. We've commonly understood the S symbol to be a letter S, standing for Superman, but the S is the house of a symbol that is the House of El family crest, a Kryptonian symbol meaning hope. It reflects Jor-El and Lara's vision of their son as a savior and a symbol of life and compassion on a new world. That's what we thought it was. In the 2025 version, there's a massive revelation that flips the script a little bit. And the emblem takes on a new meaning that Superman has to struggle with. Based on the characters and stories written by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, Superman creators Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were both Jewish and used elements from Jewish tradition to craft the character. David Corenswet is half Jewish from his father's side and is the first actor of Jewish heritage to play Superman. Which, again, some might say, oh, happy coincidence. I don't know. I feel like that's definitely plays a major factor into his casting. So let's take a look at the cast. A large cast of characters was included in the film because Gunn wanted to explore Clark Kent's interactions with his colleagues and Superman's interactions with other superheroes and show how those groups impact the character's values and choices. This is the cinematic debut of Mr. Terrific, Hawkgirl, Crypto, and Cat Grant. Cat Grant? I mean, whew, Cat Grant. Just, man. Cat Grant. Just Google her. Give her a goog. Live action debut. This is the live action debut of Metamorpho and Guy Gardner, one of the Green Lantern Corps, the Kryptonian robots that are in the Fortress of Solitude, and the Engineer, who I didn't know was called the Engineer in this movie until I did some research. As I mentioned, David Corenswet is Clark Kent, aka Superman. And Nicholas Hoult actually wanted to be Superman. Again, don't think it works. I have no doubt in Nicholas Hoult to do his best and to give us a really great performance. He was amazing as Lex Luthor, but I cannot. He's like a pretty good Lex Luthor. Pretty good to great Lex Luthor. David Corenswet was the projectionist in Pearl, and that's actually what stood out. His performance in that movie actually stood out to James Gunn when he watched Pearl, and that's what made him want to cast Corenswet as Clark Kent and Superman. Put on 40 pounds of frickin' muscle prior to filming. He's 6'4" and was originally 200 pounds, and then he puts on 40 pounds of muscle to go up to 240 pounds. So 6'4", 240. It's a big boy. David Corenswet wanted to play Superman since 2019. And, you gotta manifest your destiny, bro. So good on you, David Corenswet, whose initials are DC. So it almost feels fitting. It just feels like it feels right. You don't have to overthink it a lot of times. Sometimes the signs are there. Apparently this is insane, but he's distantly related to Christopher Reeve. Gunn also said that Corenswet's Superman is around 25 years old in the movie, the character, whereas David Corenswet, the actor, is 32, making him the oldest actor to make his debut as Superman in a live-action film, which is nuts. Producer Peter Safran described the film's take on the character for the DC universe as kindness, quote, kindness in a world that thinks of kindness as old-fashioned. And that's where we start to get into the whole, I'm sure there's like punk rock enthusiasts who are like, how dare you bastardize and use punk rock in this way? But I mean, punk rock is anti whatever's trending, anti-mainstream, right? It's like whatever the hive mind is thinking, whatever's popular, they're don't stand for that. They're against that. So kindness is not in our wheelhouse these days, as evidenced by the comments on every single video that I ever post in every episode. And so to have Superman kind of stand up against that and say, I'm not going to cave into that and give in to what the herd mentality thinks, I'm going to be quote unquote punk rock and be kind and see the beauty in people. That's the angle they were going for. And my guess is that that's why maybe it did turn off a lot of the mainstream and didn't do as well financially as DC would have hoped. Not to say that it was a bomb by any means, but certainly not to the level that where we're talking about this, and I hate to keep bringing up Dark Knight, but Dark Knight's kind of like the benchmark, right? Not the benchmark, but the zenith, the peak, where it's like, I saw that 3 times in theaters, did over $1 billion at the box office, blah, blah. So, that's what you're reaching for. That's the North Star, I guess. And when anything falls short of that, like we say, oh, it's garbage or it's trash, or that whole kind of line of thinking I never really agreed with. Like, you can still have good movies, and this is a good movie that with time could be a great movie. It feels like it's one of those movies that's just continues to grow on me. The more I learn about it, the more I know about it, the more of how I see it fitting into James Gunn's vision. It's definitely growing on me. Corenswet differentiated the role between Clark's interactions with his parents, where he really is a child, and he's looking for guidance and needs help and needs support, and he's not this all-powerful being that can rule the planet if he wanted to. So he has that kind of character mindset he has to get into, where he is serving as son and child who is looking for answers, seeking for answers, and wants wisdom. You then have his role at the Daily Planet as Clark Kent, where he's this massive big presence, 6'4", 240, but who's quote unquote desperately trying to be as small as possible and as quiet as possible, where he's trying to not get noticed and slunk around and not stand out and just blend in so that he can do his job. And then you have his role as Superman, where it's this public-facing character who wants to present himself as calm and like he's got it under control and he has authority and he knows what he's doing. He's confident. So whereas before it's Clark Kent and Superman, you also have this other Clark Kent that's, think about your work self, how you present yourself at work versus how you present yourself outside of work. How you interact with your parents is typically different than how you present yourself to a coworker or supervisor or boss. So, and I thought he did a great job of exploring that and fulfilling that. They do introduce the idea of hypnotic glasses. So, the long-standing question amongst people who maybe are not as familiar with the comics like myself is, how do people not recognize that Superman is Clark Kent? Like it's the same person, just like a different hairstyle. And so the comics at one point introduced the idea of hypnotic glasses, so that when Clark Kent puts on the glasses, that it tricks people's brains into seeing another face or a different face than that of Superman. So the use of hypnotic glasses to subtly distort his appearance has been forgotten from the comic book canon, but it was reintroduced here, and I like it. But the return of Superman's iconic trunks was requested by David Corenswet. Quote, "The thought that I always had was what you said. Superman needs to be huggable," he told James Gunn. "And there is something about this suit that's disarming. Maybe they're supposed to look a little silly. Maybe the reason he wears them is to look a little silly. Basically, to undermine how powerful he really is." And, that goes back to what we were saying before with the choices that they make about Superman is like, he is someone that doesn't like to swear. He says, "God, good gosh," and "darn it." Very Kansasite, very Kansas-like, right? And the red tights, tighty whities, like that, is some see as silly, but it's also what kids can gravitate towards or at least relate to, running around in your tighty whities as a kid. So I think that was a smart choice. Rachel Brosnahan plays Lois Lane. She's probably best known for playing the lead in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel on Prime Video. Lois is, according to Brosnahan, Lois Lane, quote, "isn't so sure about Clark Kent and needs to be convinced about being in a relationship with him." Nicholas Hoult, as we said, is Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is not supposed to be physically imposing. It's like everything that Superman is what Lex Luthor is not, and that's why Lex Luthor hates Superman for the most part. It's a laundry list of reasons, but that's why I think Hoult works so well as Lex Luthor, is because he's not physically intimidating. Hoult, as Luthor, knows that he's not physically intimidating. He desperately wants to be intimidating and have power and control and authority, but he's not getting it. And even from, the people he works with or his cohorts, it takes a lot of effort on his part to try and convince people that he's this powerful person. And he's not being, for the most part, I don't think he's being taken very seriously. And so that's why he goes to such great lengths. Hoult described Luthor as obsessive, determined, and relentless, and wanted the character to feel like a credible threat to Superman. And just as a person who wants to or needs to be recognized for his scientific genius. Then you have Eddie Gathegi. Eddie Gathegi. Pretty sure that's how you pronounce it. I looked it up. He's a Kenyan American actor. His last name comes from the Kikuyu language. He plays Michael Hoult, aka Mr. Terrific, in this here flick. Eddie has been in For All Mankind. And then you might remember him as Armando Munez, aka Darwin, in X-Men First Class. Michael Hoult, Mr. Terrific, is a superhero and inventor who uses a variety of high-tech gadgets to fight crime. He's a genius with 14 PhDs. So he's a mastery of various fields, including physics and engineering. He's also an Olympic athlete. Why not? He was a gold medalist in the decathlon, described as one of the most accomplished and versatile athletes in the world. He possesses a quote-unquote fair play moral code and an IQ of 200 plus, making him one of the smartest humans in the DC universe, often compared to Batman and Lex Luthor in intellect. This is something that was not explained in the movie, but I'm sure avid comic book readers would understand why he has the words fair play on his leather jacket that he wears in the movie. The fair play moral code means absolute integrity, equality, and accountability in everything he does. It comes from his belief that everyone deserves a fair chance, regardless of background, power, or privilege. Hell yeah, I can get behind that. For Michael Hoult, fair play isn't just about following the rules, it's about doing what's right even when it's hard or inconvenient. It guides how he uses genius and technology, never to dominate or exploit, only to help others and make the world more just. If only there were more Michael Hoults in the world. Hoult eventually saw that pure intelligence without empathy, keywords there, pure intelligence without empathy was meaningless. Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, the Green Lantern. You remember him from Castle, Firefly, Serenity, Slither, The Suicide Squad. He was TDK in the 2021 version. Guardians 2 and 3. Two Guys, a Girl, in a Pizza Place. What? And he also voiced Hal Jordan in one of the animated series. Hal Jordan, another Green Lantern. Abrasive galactic peacekeeper in the Green Lantern Corps. Fearless, overconfident jerk is how Fillion described his character. He drew inspiration for Gardner from Estelle Getty's Sophia Petrillo in the sitcom The Golden Girls, which is hilarious. Fillion referred back to the character's origin story in which Gardner was hit by a bus and sent into a coma as what, quote, flipped the switch for his personality, making him, quote, off a little bit. I do like the film retain the characters. Guy Gardner's iconic bowl cut haircut from the comics, which Fillion insisted on having despite some discussions about changing his hairstyle. Isabella Merced is Kendra Saunders, aka Hawkgirl. I don't even know her name was Kendra Saunders. Isabella Merced was Dina in The Last of Us. She played Kay in Alien Romulus, and she auditioned for the title role in Batgirl, which was that, I think it was like a $70 to $90 million production that ended up getting completely scrapped. So Hawkgirl is a superhero with actual biological wings and various melee weapons. Kendra is the grandniece of the original Hawkgirl, Shira Hall. Merced felt that her role as Anya Corazon in Sony's Spider-Man universe film Madam Web helped prepare her to play Hawkgirl, though she did not tell the Superman filmmakers about that role in case they did not want her to play both, which is so funny. Anthony Kerrigan plays Rex Mason, aka Metamorpho, aka Element Man. You might remember Anthony as Calypso in the Twisted Metal TV series. He also played NoHo Hank in Barry, and also Victor Zizaz in Gotham. Rex Mason is an archaeologist and superhero who can, quote, transmute elements in his body into various forms. Kerrigan compared Metamorpho's concerns about his abilities to Kerrigan's own alopecia. Kerrigan said that he really understood on a human level this idea of feeling different, feeling like something that has happened to you feels like a curse, quite tortured with what was going on. The really human quality of struggling with that, I think, comes through. And his role required him to sit in a makeup chair for 5 to 6 hours. Oh, per day? Oh, my God. Skylar Gassando plays Jimmy Olsen. You may remember him as Gideon Gemstone. Oh my God, Gideon Gemstone. Gideon Gemstone from the Righteous Gemstones. He was also Howard Stacy in The Amazing Spider-Man. And he played Dewdrop in Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox Story. Jimmy Olsen's a boyish young photographer who is Clark and Lois's closest colleague, and yet he never takes a single photograph in this movie. Wendell Pierce plays Daily Pan editor-in-chief Perry White. You might remember him as Detective Bunk from The Wire. He also played Congressman Gary in Thunderbolts, and was the voice of Lex Luthor in the animated Harley Quinn series. Pierce said Perry is always grumpy because Luthor had an affair with Perry's wife, and Perry's second child may actually be Lex Luthor's. Beck Bennett, you might remember him from Saturday Night Live. He's also the voice of the Buffalo in all those Buffalo Wild Wings commercials. He plays sports reporter Steve Lombard. I think that's perfectly cast. Michaela Hoover as gossip/celebrity news columnist Kat Grant. Oh my God. I cannot say what's in my brain right now. I can't say it. I don't care about being canceled, but listen, she is just stunning. She is a beautiful woman, and they gave her some very revealing outfits in this movie. Just as a gentleman who appreciates the female form, thank you for incorporating Cat Grant into this movie, because I appreciated it big time. Pruitt Taylor Vince and Neva Howell as Jonathan and Martha Kent, Clark's adoptive human parents. Bradley Cooper and Angela Sarafian plays Superman's Kryptonian parents, Jor-El and Lara Lorvan. Angela Sarafian, the actress, you might remember her as Clementine Pennyfeather from the TV series Westworld. You also have the Superman robots who aid Superman at the Fortress of Solitude. They are voiced by Alan Tudyk, who also voiced Dr. Phosphorus in Creature Commandos. You also have Sarah Sampaio as Eve Teschmacher, who is Lex Luthor's assistant and girlfriend. Maria Gabrielle de Feria plays Angela Spica, aka the engineer, an ally of Lex Luthor whose abilities come from nanotechnology in her body. She's also a member of The Authority, which is another DCU project in the works that, if I'm going to be honest, I don't think it's going to be a film. I think it's going to end up being a TV series if it becomes anything at all. You also have Crypto, the superpowered dog, who James Gunn described as a, quote, not so good boy, primarily created with visual effects, but modeled after James Gunn's own dog named Ozu, Frank Grillo. He reprises his role as Argus director Rick Flag Sr. from the animated DCU series Creature Commandos, and from Peacemaker. You might remember Frank Grillo as Brock Rumlow, aka Crossbones, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As far as the plot goes, we opened with the new DCU logo, and I love how the emphasis is on the importance of Superman to DC, breaking through the chains, which was the back cover of Superman comic issue 1. We have the on-screen scroll text that appears line by line, where, it has 3 centuries ago, we were introduced to the new era of gods of monsters. 3 decades ago, Kal-El was born. 3 years ago, Superman went public, or, was made known to the world. And then 3 weeks ago, Superman intervened in the Baravia Janhapur conflict. 3 hours ago, Superman battled Hammer Baravia. 3 minutes ago, Superman lost for the first time. This whole text was David Corenswet's idea. As a huge Star Wars fan, he loved how the on-scroll text helps set up the story. And yeah, I have to agree. Like that, if you're ever wondering, like, oh man, exposition is so tough. Sometimes it's best not to overthink it. Just like, hey, bing, bang, boom. Here's you're fully up to speed. There you go. You don't need a full like scene where you have people gathered around a holographic table and with holograms and maps and visual. Like, no, just simple text. Here's a little preamble. Interesting that they picked 3 centuries ago for when metahumans first, or the era of gods and monsters started, because that would put that time at around 1725, which is around 50 years before 1776. So is there, like, are they kind of hinting towards the idea that metahumans were instrumental in America being founded? Possibly. I don't know. That's where my brain goes. Is like anytime you are hovering around 1776, it's a huge year in terms of like you think about how the world has changed since then, and like basically not insinuating or implying, but maybe pointing to the fact that metahumans were a big part of that is intriguing to me. So, and interesting that David Corenswet had that kind of input, and they were like, you know what? Yeah, that's great. I think that's the sign of like you're working on a really great project, is when you can have, it's not all James Gunn directing and writing. It's like you have the input from the characters, and they're really making their own, and they're helping with the not just their own character, but to the overall story and project. I think that's the sign that you've got a good unit, you got a good crew. The fact that it took Superman 3 minutes to fly from Metropolis to the South Pole was interesting. I decided to, I didn't do the math, but I decided to ask ChatGPT. The South Pole is about 8,600 miles from the state of Delaware, where Metropolis is located, which makes Superman's flying speed around 172,000 miles per hour. If you're wondering, whoa, that's like the speed of light. Not quite. The speed of light is 186,282 miles per second. So not quite speed of light. And we did get to see this in the promos and trailers. And I know it didn't sit well with a lot of people, but we see Superman like defeated, bloody, and laying on the ground and wheezing, and a lot of blood. We haven't really seen that, at least in the cinematic forays. We have not seen a very beat up, bloodied Superman. So that was, again, another way to differentiate this project from others. So you don't, you basically, he just didn't, I think mainly he didn't want the audience to say, we've seen this before, or this is the same old shit. And so I think he did a great job of that. This is also the first time on screen for Crypto, the Superdog. I thought the Fortress of Solitude looked great, but it's my note here was not too conspicuous at all. It's just like it sure it blends into the environment, but it's like, well, that there's nothing else that looks like that in this area. So I still think it looked great. The crystals in the Fortress of Solitude were made from resin. Quote, all the resin that existed on the eastern seaboard in 2023, we bought it all. Mickle said, I think Mickle was the set designer or visual design expert. Mickle said it was cheaper than a CGI set. Inside Superman base, the computer, the dashboard, and every crystal behind it, along with the floor, were all also physical builds, which I love. More practical effects, more physical builds, please. It looks better and it works better. So yeah, I think that's definitely, I'm hopefully, I think you're starting to see that more as like, okay, we went a little too CGI crazy there for a little bit, and we need to just dial it back and have it like fill in the gaps here and there when we're when practical effects can't achieve everything that we want. We get to see Superman's robots, automatons. They made it clear that these are automatons, so that they don't have consciousness or feelings or anything like that. Although there are some interesting quotes and commentary from the robots where it's like, well, you are aware of it. So I thought that was an interesting way to approach it, is like they present or claim that they're automatons that are just following order and they just have programming, but it's like there's like, for instance, Four, who's voiced by Robot Four, they all have a number on their front or whatever. There's like 12 of them. Four, who's voiced by Alan Tudyk, eventually wants to be called Gary. It's like, okay, but why would you want to be called Gary if you're just an automaton? So I think that's also another interesting twist on it, is like, yeah, the robots, they claim to be automatons, but you can see like their programming is updating and changing to the fact where they want to have a name and they are starting to have feelings and consciousness and all that stuff. So will that come into play in the next installment? Possibly. So as Superman's robots are helping Superman to heal up and repair himself, they use concentrated solar radiation to heal him, and they comfort him with a message from his birth parents, Jor-El and Lara Lorvan, who sent him to Earth to save him from the destruction of their planet Krypton. The message was damaged during the journey, so only the first half can be played. And it goes as follows. Jor-El says, "We love you more than heaven, our son. We love you more than land. Our beloved home will soon be gone forever, but hope vitalizes our hearts, and that hope is you, Kal-El." Lara then says, "We have searched the universe for a home where you can do the most good and live out Krypton's truth. That place is Earth." And so they play that parent's message to soothe Clark, aka Superman. And it's such a nice touch, because I think most of us have been there, but I know I've been there when you have lost someone or miss something. My father passed in 2006 from a heart attack, as most of you know. My sister and I was able to digitize all of our home videos play, and so my sister would watch those home videos all the time just because she wanted to hear his voice and see him on camera. And I think I did that. I did a similar thing with my daughter, where it's like she doesn't really know her grandfather, never got to meet him or see him or anything. And so on his birthday in March, I decided to play her the videos. So I think that's such a great choice by James Gunn in this case, where it's like, he was a baby when he was sent away from Krypton to Earth. And so it's so interesting that he clings to this thing that he has not seen or heard or experienced in 30 plus years, 3 decades, but yet he has adoptive parents, but yet it's the original message from his birth parents that he clings to. It's so interesting. Is like, it's like kind of taking for granted what happened with your adoptive parents and relying on your birth parents. I think we experience that in many facets, where it's like, hey, you have this here right now, but you're eschewing that or usurping that in favor of something that has been gone and will not be around. Why? So, but I do think that's and it also shows his humanity, that he's not this, like, Superman is often portrayed as infallible. He has no flaws. He has no errors. He's indestructible. It's like he's this all perfect being. And James Gunn made a concerted effort to show that no, he's more human than has been portrayed of him in the past. We're going to really lean into showing how human he is. And this is a very human thing, to cling to a message to soothe you after you got your ass handed to you. Like even the robot saying, "Oh, there's damage to your this, there's damage to your that." We have not, have you ever heard in a previous Superman movie of someone saying you have damage to your kidney and your liver or your organs or any? Because like that's just not how Superman was portrayed. He's portrayed as this alien who's got all these superpowers and has no vulnerabilities or weakness other than kryptonite. But it's like, no, he still can take damage. Like I thought that was very key. in establishing his humanity right off the bat. You see him laying on the ground bleeding. He needs the help of a dog and robots and this, playing the message to soothe him, physical damage, so it's a great way to open the movie. Crypto and Superman are followed by Angel Speaker, the engineer, who kind of looks like an updated. I don't know if this was on purpose or if this is how she looks from the comics, but kind of looks like an updated version of the crew, General Zod's crew. Like if you think back to Superman 2, similar kind of all black outfits that are a little more flowy. They were like the blouse from Seinfeld, the pirate shirt, but. And then even in Man of Steel, which I don't think I've watched from start to finish in a long time, but like similar all black kind of outfit. So that kind of got General Zod vibes from her get up. We zoom in on the S, which is not an S. It's just a symbol of hope, or at least we thought. And the robots are saying, "Sir, Superman wants to go back out there." He's like, "I'm good. I got to get back out there and fight the Hammer Baravia, who's continuing to do damage." And the robots are like, "You're at like 80%. He's like, "It's fine. I'm good. I can do this." So then we cut to Lex Luthor's headquarters, Luthor Corps, where his girlfriend Eve is taking selfies, just taking some innocent selfies. Just nothing more to those selfies than just her own vanity, right? Lex is calling the shots. He's programming attacks against Superman. So he has these codes, these number letter codes, 34B, 98Z, 8H, 12C, 44D, all correspond with a different action, showcasing that the Hammer Baravia is not like really autonomous. It's being kind of puppeted or puppeteered, controlled by Lex and his crew. We are introduced to the campgrounds where there are tents on a beach near the city of Metropolis. It's there that the Hammer Baravia walks through a portal and through another into headquarters, Luthor Corps, I believe it is. The bridge at Luthor Corps kind of looks like an X, and so that kind of stood out to me, and could be that it's the subversion of the S. So Superman's chest is the symbol of hope in the S letter, and the building features an X. You might read it as a visual counterpoint, an antithesis to the hope symbol representing Luthor's opposing philosophy. So while the S represents Superman, the X represents Lex. Superman returns to Metropolis and again beaten by the Hammer Baravia. We're then introduced to the Daily Planet. I love that there are girls fawning over Jimmy Olsen because it's kind of like Jimmy doesn't notice it, but everyone else is like, "What is going on here?" Like the audience included. Like Jimmy's just not picking up on why people don't fully grasp and understand why girls are all about Jimmy Olsen. But again, this is not something where it's pulling out of thin air. This is heavily influenced by what was going on in the comics. Like he's not a ladies' man in the strictest sense, but like chicks dig him, man. We are also introduced to Gurkos, who's the president of Baravia, who curses out Superman. We're introduced to Ultraman, who is a special ops figure who looks a hell of a lot like Black Noir from The Boys, which is interesting. You have the engineer, and we also have soldiers that are called Raptors, and they all comprise of a unit called Planet Watch that Lex is basically pitching to the U.S. government and to Argus to help protect the world, and that using metahumans as the reason why Planet Watch needed to be founded and needs to be implemented is because metahumans are have all this power, but it's unchecked. Like, who's watching the metahumans that are watching us? I gotta say, the picture that they use. So Luthor's giving like a slideshow or whatever presentation, and he puts up a picture of Planet Watch, and it looks like it's such a good picture that they used. It's so funny because it looks like your standard picture that you would take of like you and your coworkers at an event, a work event, where it's just like we're all like it's almost like a team photo for a football team photo that you would see whenever before the season, high school, college, NFL, like they always take everyone, They have like fucking 5, 6, 7, 8 rows of guys. You have guys sitting on the ground, then you have guys taking a knee, and then you guys, shorter guys, taller guys, tallest guys, all lined up taking this group team photo. And that's exactly how the Planet Watch guys looked, except it wasn't a 53-man roster. It's like 12 dudes and the engineer. It's just so funny. We're also get to see Frank Grillo's first appearance in live action as General Rick Flag Sr. Lex says that Superman is popular, but less so every day. And I thought there was a really great, nice transition from this scene to the next, where it's, I forget who, but closes the suitcase and locks it in that meeting, in Lex's meeting with Argus. Like, they focus on that as like, this is, we're shutting this meeting down. We're closing down this meeting. Lock the suitcase, and that immediately is almost seamlessly blends into the next scene in Lois Lane's apartment, where we see the door unlocking. So we have the locking of the suitcase coming down, and then we have the unlocking of the door for Lois Lane entering her apartment to find Clark Kent. I thought it was interesting that Superman loves breakfast for dinner. Who doesn't? Lois Lane doesn't. That's who. And there's the toast in the toaster. So there's a focus on that. So if I'm like teaching a class here about film, it's like, why are we focusing on the locking of the suitcase and the unlocking of the door? And then why are we closing in on the toast in the toaster? And to me, the toast in the toaster is a foreshadowing of what's to come. Things are heating up. They're getting toasty, meaning like emotions are rising. It's getting hot and heated in this apartment because of the conflict and the combative nature of what's about to happen. It's a mixture of emotions, that it's fear, but it's also lust. It's also flirtation and passion and playfulness. So it's heating up, You're burning with emotion. So that's what that toast in the toaster signified to me, at least. The Superman agrees to be interviewed by Lois. So Clark agrees to be interviewed by Lois as Superman, which leads to an argument when Lois presses him on the legal and ethical implications of his actions in Baravia. He didn't, run it by anyone before he intervened. He just unilaterally went in there and did his thing. He was very cautious and concerned about doesn't want to like kill anyone or do any kind of damage like that, but he does want to put a stop to it. What I loved, so this is what was featured in the promos and trailers that I didn't like so much, was that back and forth was just like, I don't know if that's really getting me to buy the ticket here, folks. What I did like about this scene is that Clark Kent didn't know how to operate the recorder. I love that. How do you pause this? How do you stop this? So it's like he's not really a good reporter, because all he basically writes about is Superman, and he is Superman. So you can understand Lois's position on this, where she's like, there's got to be a little bit of, I don't know if it's jealousy or envy or contempt or even resentment for Clark, because it's like, I put the work in. I'm doing real work. This is me as Lois speaking. I'm doing the real work, and you are just you interviewing you. Like, and you are getting all this, you get all the whatever accolades and praise, and you're just skating by because you're just interviewing you. It's all, there's no real Q&A there. There's no kind of doing investigative journalism. It's just like the easiest thing that you could possibly do. So I can see in her mind, subconsciously, that's why she's a little bit upset with him. But I love that he doesn't know how to operate the recorder. That's like one of the best parts of that scene. Is this the most emotional that we have seen Superman or Clark Kent? I think you look back at like Christopher Reeve's portrayal, it's very, for the most part, very placid, very like calm, and then you look at Henry Cavill, it's like he was kind of, you saw there was probably one or two scenes where he really like lets loose and lets out a primal scream, but most of the time it's subdued. This is like the most emotional, or at least, I don't know, human that you would have ever seen Clark Kent be, screaming people were going to die. Superman saying shit. Have we seen a Superman say shit before? Have we seen a Lois Lane say shit? So it's in introducing new elements or twists on characters that we have not really seen before, at least in the film world. And then of course it ends with Lois saying, "I knew this would never work. I told you I wasn't good at relationships." So, and the trust that Superman has in this woman who you just started dating, and you've really been an open book with her, which goes against what we have seen in terms of the cinematic history of Batman's character and Bruce Wayne, like holding that very close to the chest, really struggling with that internally, and like, should I reveal this? Should I tell her? I have to tell her, and being on the precipice of telling her, and then something happens and it gets ruined, and he's not able to fully be vulnerable and honest and open and transparent, because he knows that it puts her in danger, but also might put him in danger, because who knows, maybe this woman turns on him and tells the world, and then it's like, oh shit, I'm fucked. Superman like did not have any concern about that whatsoever, which again is a great way to approach the character. Is like, this is not Batman, in that he believes that this information will not hurt him or the ones around him, because he has that innate trust in people to be good and to do good. So, but like, what's to prevent Lois Lane from, I guess, her journalistic integrity is what he's relying on, is that this is all me, knowing that I'm Superman is off the record. You're 3 months into a relationship, and she's like, it's over. It's like, I wonder if there was any level of panic. I guess not. That's what makes him Superman, makes me me. I'd be like, oh, she's about to tell the world. We go back to Antarctica, where Lex Luthor arrives with Eve, his girlfriend, Ultraman, and the engineer, who I affectionately referred to in my notes as Nanites chick. Because I don't think they ever actually referred to her as Angela or the engineer throughout the movie. Ultraman flies, which is like, oh, okay, interesting. Takes out all the robots with the engineer. And then there's this quote from Lex Luthor talking about Superman, which I thought was just so good. Lex Luthor says, "I can't stand the metahumans, but he's so much worse. Superman. He's not a man. He's an it. A thing with a cocky grin and a stupid outfit that's somehow become the focal point of the entire world's conversation. Nothing's felt right since he showed up." And in that moment, the way that Nicholas Hoult delivers that and the way he looks, it reminded me of the Grinch, just kind of like sticking his jaw out. And like when the Grinch is just like getting so pissed off and talking shit about the Who's in Whoville. It's just like, that's the kind of energy that Nicholas Hoult gave us in that moment. And I was like, he's the Grinch right now. And I get it, and I'm into it. The engineer ends up hacking the computer, which was she was able to repair the message, and it also felt very Matrixy. There's a lot of Matrix type. It was never clearly stated in any of the research that I did that James Gunn had the Matrix in mind when making this, but it feels like there was heavily influenced by the Matrix in terms as it relates to the engineer and the nanites technology. It felt very Matrixy. And we saw another case of that later on in the movie, when Superman is attacked. Lex Luthor's goons release a monster who looks like Stitch from Lilo and Stitch. Again, that's a choice, right? Is that a choice based on the fact that they knew Lilo and Stitch was coming out, and they probably had a pretty good idea that it was going to be wildly popular and successful? Did that have any influence? Did that have any impact? And one of the goons says, "This thing? Yeah, this little thing is gonna fuck shit up." And the other goon is like, "Nah, it grows." And sure enough, the next day, a much larger version of the monster attacks Metropolis and fights Superman. Superman, this was also an interesting choice. There's a point where I think Superman's like underneath the kaiju's leg. The kaiju then stomps Superman into the ground. Superman then burrows underground, like you see him burrowing under the ground, from the surface level. It looked like Bugs Bunny, like from the old Bugs Bunny cartoons, which is a Warner Brothers property. I feel like that was a little ode or shout out to Bugs Bunny. That's like, Superman just kind of burrowing under the ground where you can see him moving under the ground. Apparently Superman is flame retardant. I must have forgotten that. That was a nice little touch. Good to see him saving people individually. I think, we talked about that a little bit when it came to Thunderbolts. There was like a big wave of criticism over superhero movies, I want to say in the mid 2010s, where specifically with Man of Steel, it was like, okay, so they're just doing, and also with, I believe, Avengers Age of Ultron, where it's like, these superheroes are just doing a monumental amount of damage, like so much damage to the city with what appears to be little care for the civilians or the residents and saving people. It's more about defeating the enemy at all costs. And so there was some backlash amongst the audiences, like, what about the people? Like, this is the whole point of superheroes, was they save people. And so you're now starting to see it's more prevalent in a lot of superhero movies like Thunderbolts, where you see them saving individuals and people. Superman takes it a step further by not just saving like a little girl, which we saw in the promos and the trailers from the exploding building, but also saving a squirrel. I thought that was really funny. It's like he just cares and has so much love for every living thing and being. It's insane. So as he's saving not just people individually, but also squirrels and animals, the Justice Gang shows up. So it's Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, and Guy Gardner, the Green Lantern. They, and I thought this was a great, and this is what, separates a average to good action movie from a great action movie. This scene where they're fighting the kaiju, it's like, okay, it's superheroes versus kaiju. Yeah, it's kind of like, all right. But then even like throughout it, Superman still views this massive kaiju that is destroying the city and threatening people's lives as an animal that needs to be saved. And that throughout this battle, the Justice Gang is attacking the kaiju in really brutal, barbaric ways, right? And you can tell just from how Superman is handling the situation, he doesn't want to kill the kaiju. The Justice Gang is like, we need to neutralize the threat, and so we have to take this kaiju down, and if we have to kill it, then we have to kill it. Superman is not in favor of killing the kaiju because he literally loves all living things, which I love about Superman. And so he wants to take the creature alive. You have, I think it was, I forget which one. It might have been Hawkgirl, but like Hawkgirl's like poking the kaiju right in the eyeball, which if you've ever, it reminds me of that scene from Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, the second one, where like he's trying to torture the guy who has like the raven as the pet because he thinks he knows information about the guano. And he starts like, starts poking his eyeball and freaking the guy out. And so that is happening here, where like I think Hawkgirl is poking the monster's eye, and it's disgusting and gross. And Superman's like, oh, there's got to be a better way to do this. And then, of course, Mr. Terrific launches the T-spheres or the bombs into the monster's stomach and ends up killing the kaiju and blows it up. And we hear Guy Gardner say, kaiju steaks all around, huh? And Superman says, I was hoping we could capture it and take it to an intergalactic zoo, or at least euthanize it less painfully. And Guy Gardner says, come on, bro, don't be such a wuss. So, this comes back to the whole punk rock theme here. It's like, okay, punk rock, I can't imagine if this movie was released in like the 80s, what kind of reception it would have got, but it's a different time. So that's when the Lex Luthor broadcasts the Kryptonian message, the fully repaired Kryptonian message, where it has the whole message, not just the first half, from Kal-El's parents. Superman is shocked to hear the second half, in which the parents' message takes a turn. So the message on the Jumbotron has Jor-El and Laura. Jor-El, this is the second half of the message. So we already went over the first half, where it sounds pretty positive, like hope, all that great stuff. This one, the second half, starts with Jor-El saying, "The people there are simple and profoundly confused, weak of mind and spirit and body, lord over the planet as the last son of Krypton." Laura then chimes in with, "Dispatch of anyone unable or unwilling to serve you, Kal-El. Take as many wives as you can so your genes and Krypton's might and legacy will live on in this new frontier." It's just like, holy, that's a left turn. Hard right on that one. Jor-El then finishes it with, "Do us proud, our beloved son, rule without mercy." And so I'm sitting there going, there's no, and apparently it was verified by Mr. Terrific, but he says there's no way that message is fake. The message is authentic. And so that's kind of an eye opener. That's a little bit of a jaw dropper because, we've been trained, just like Bruce Wayne's parents murdered in the alley. That's how Bruce Wayne becomes Batman. Like, it's always, we have the message from the parents, and it's always a message of hope and inspiring and motivates Clark Kent, Kal-El to become Superman and serve the world. And now we're seeing a totally different version of the message where it's like, no, we actually want you to go there and conquer the world and take it over for us Kryptonians. James Gunn also confirmed that Jor-El and Lara's translated message was real, thus establishing that they indeed sent Kal-El to Earth with the purpose of ruling it. Gunn wanted Superman's desire to do good to be his own choice and not a destiny instilled in him by his parents. Feeling like obligated to do it because your parents said so versus this is something I want to do, which I thought was also a great decision on Gunn's part. Public opinion then turns against Superman, and there's a smear campaign on the television show called The Sphere, which is hosted by Michael Ian Black, which I thought was a great choice in casting. Michael Ian Black plays the TV show host named Clevis Thornweight, who is interviewing Lex Luthor, and Lex Luthor basically, like, is a billionaire, has a lot of influence over the media, specifically this show. Clevis, so Michael Ian Black as Clevis says, "But what about all the kind acts Superman has performed over the years, saving countless lives?" Lex Luthor says, "No, he's grooming us, lulling us into complacency so he can dominate without resistance, forging a path for his superpowered descendants to rule the earth. I will not accept that. Will you?" Clevis Thornweight, "You seem upset." Lex Luthor, I'm scared. I will admit that. I am scared because who knows how large his secret harem is already. So I think there's some interesting keywords that are being used here. Grooming, secret harem. This is playing into the real life situation that's going on with Jeffrey Epstein, and knowing that, so there is that conspiracy, but also, you think about QAnon, you think about a lot of the things that are going on in real life where we have become very adept and skilled at painting a picture that influences people based on, the fact that certain things have come to light. And so then it's basically making a very easy connection and bridging the gap between savior and our undoing, right? So I really liked how they worded this because it falls in line with what a lot of people who are pushing an agenda or propaganda or who want you to believe something, that's the kind of language that you would hear or see. So I thought that was very powerful. And then even the president of Moravia in his press conference, he says, "Also, from what I hear, Superman finds Moravian women the most physically attractive and wants to add them to his secret harem." So you can see there's a lot of like dialogue and dialect that hits home because and connects because of what the world we live in right now and the real life conversations that are being had and the messages being spread by people in positions of authority or power, and and that then becomes their followers then run with that, narrative or whatever storyline they're trying to push. And so there's certain things that they attach to: grooming, secret harem. And so then you say it enough times over these channels of mass communication being televised, and the people that might be on the fence or their supporters, they then latch on to that, and then they can then drive that home as a point, even though, is it factually accurate? Is there any evidence behind it? No. But it's a question, and it's a question that can't be fully answered and debunked most of the time. Once the press conference is done, we see the president go into his office, and there's a secret portal behind the painting. He then goes through the portal and meets up with Lex. And I love that Ultraman handed him a donut. It's just like this intimidating black noir looking dude hands a donut to the president. I thought that was a nice little touch. We see back at the fortress, there's Superman comes back to the destruction, and the fortress being a mess. We learn that the fortress, the front gate, the door is keyed to his DNA. So it's like, how did Lex get in without using force? It's keyed to DNA. Who did he have the DNA? What's going on there? So they plant the seed there. And then we get to see Superman crying over a downed robot, which again, robot, an automaton. They don't have feelings. They don't have consciousness. They're the least human thing on this earth. And yet you have Superman who feels an emotional attachment to this robot that has been downed, that does not have feelings or consciousness. So it's, I assume that there are going to be a lot of people that really don't like this version of Superman. I love this version of Superman. I think it just goes against our nature to not feel emotions. And as someone that has really struggled with my emotions, and that does feel deeply, but that comes across as someone that is unfeeling or doesn't have empathy, I just like that he's not. He does feel and have empathy and is human, and I think that's important to his mission, because we'll see what the other side of that looks like if he does not have emotions or empathy or feelings, what that happens. So you have Lex, who has the super hyper intelligence and a lot of money, but does not have the empathy. And then you have Mr. Terrific, who's in a similar vein of Lex Luthor, of super smart, super rich, but does have the empathy. Then you have Superman, who has all these powers, but that knows that he cannot use it for dominance or exploitation. He wants to use it to help. And then you have someone else who is very much like Superman, who does not have that within him, and how he's able to use that. So it kind of goes back to, interestingly enough, I saw a YouTube video from Screen Crush that was talking about, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace is 1987 was just garbage, right? It was awful. But one of the things that stood out to me in watching this recap video from Screen Crush was that in Superman 4, Superman initially wants to destroy the nukes, right? Because he thinks that the nukes are going to end us all. But it's like the nukes are just a tool. It's how humanity uses those tools that can be to either our benefit or to be our demise, right? So his job goes from, I need to destroy all the nukes, to, I need to talk to humans and be like, nukes are not do not use nukes. So it's similar in, like, you have these tools. How are you going to use these tools? Are you going to use these tools for good? Are you going to use them for evil? Are you going to use to help two people? Are you going to use to advance yourself? And I think, I don't want to sound like I don't know what, a hippie or, but I got a little bit of hippie in me, or a slacker, but like, you can just see that a lot of people are using tools for their own, like, are you helping the cause? Are you helping humanity? Or are you doing it to help yourselves? The bottom line, blah, blah, blah. So there's my little rant, little spiel. You're welcome. Superman busts in to Luthor Corps because Crypto's missing, the dog. And so he's busts into Luthor Corps as Lex is having a meeting with the host of the Sphere, Clevis, played by Michael Ian Black, and demands to know where the dog is. He is caught on video, basically berating Lex Luthor and showing a very angry side of himself. Lex interviewing with Clevis and saying, like, putting this out there and it not being refuted. And then you have even like the Peacemaker cameo where he's painting Superman in a negative light, and then you have this clip come out. So it's like it's a very fabricated, manufactured, constructed portrayal of Superman from Lex's point of view to make him look like crap and to make him look like an actual threat. And that's what Lex's key message here is: brains over brawn. Brains will beat brawn. And then Superman, falls right into Lex's lap here where he's like berating him about the dog, which Lex denies it and looks innocent in this video, but it's taken out of context. It's a clip, and so that makes the rounds. In addition to that, you have we later find out that Lex Luthor has employed like 1,000 troll monkeys, to just put out all kinds of really negative stuff on social media, across social media. So all that combined, it does a number on me mentally to think about how social media and mass media in general, can be like these campaigns. It just can be molded, melded, forged, manipulated to serve a message. And do we ever really know the complete, whole, full truth? Rarely. Like, it's funny that I get accused of black and white thinking, and yet the kind of shit that's happening in the world where it's like, if you're not red, you're blue. If you're not blue, you're red. If you're not this, you're that. If you're not right, you're left. If you're not left, you're right. You're not. And it's like, I'm just going to be over here chilling and observing all this nonsense and just taking it in and just going about my life in a way that where I try to improve myself and hopefully help others. That's basically what I'm going to try and do. I'm going to try and be more like Superman. As a 45-year-old. Oh boy. I mentioned the Peacemaker interview on the TV. This was very quick and happened very quickly, and I didn't really pick up on it, but I thought it would be interesting to kind of put this out there. So Clevis, the host, says, ever since the discovery of the Kryptonians' master plan, again, wording, master plan, he's gone off the deep end. Again, has he? Thoughts, Chris? So he's interviewing Chris Smith, a.k.a. Peacemaker. Peacemaker, played by John Cena, responds with, can't say I'm surprised, Clevis. I don't know why I just dipped into a southern accent. I don't know, Clevis. I guess because Clevis feels like a southern name. Peacemaker says, can't say I'm surprised, Clevis. It's guys like this. They always got a whole bunch of dark, ugly secrets. Clevis Thornweight says, what do you mean, guys like this? Peacemaker responds with, thinks he's better than everybody else. Makes this declaration he's against killing people unless it's absolutely necessary. Really, dude? It kind of sounds like you're trying to make the guys who are a little more edgier than you look like jerks. Know what I mean? Clevis Thornweight says, mm-hmm. Peacemaker says, a lot of these guys, these heroes from the magazines, they're obsessed with me because I'm more jacked than they are. So this hits on a couple of levels. One is, so Peacemaker season 1 came out in 2022. I want to say it was the winter of 2022. So January into February 2022. So it's still the DCEU. 2025, right? Peacemaker 2, we all know, is about to happen immediately after the events of Superman. We saw the journey that Peacemaker went on in season 1. So it does feel a little bit out of place that Peacemaker would be saying these things on the show, because it makes it seem like he didn't learn his lesson from season 1. Does that make sense? But then again, is this saying like, oh, well, Season 1 was DCEU Peacemaker, and then season 2 is DCU Peacemaker, and so it can get a little convoluted and confusing. It is also meant to be funny because, I mean, Peacemaker's whole deal is that he kills people. He kills people to keep the peace. So, I mean, it falls in line with Peacemaker. Like, it's not like he wouldn't say that. It's just interesting the timing, because it's like I pictured like beginning of season 1 Peacemaker or the Suicide Squad Peacemaker from 2021 to say something like this, as opposed to 2025 Peacemaker, who is about to go on this journey in season 2. I don't know. The timing is weird, which makes me think, oh, is this a different version of Peacemaker? Is this the same Peacemaker? It was I mean, it's interesting to say the least, and it was not unsettling or disruptive to the point where it like takes you out of it, but it does make you think. So in that same very scene, so Peacemaker's on the TV, and we peel back to see that it's Superman and Lois talking, and then we have in the background, the backdrop is the Justice Gang fighting this massive alien, which I thought was pretty funny. During the scene in which Lois comforts a demoralized Superman, the Justice Gang can be seen in the background fighting some kind of energy creature. When Lois asks if Superman should lend a hand, he dismisses the creature as an imp, suggesting that it's some iteration of Mr. Spell this for you, and you tell me how I'm supposed to pronounce it. MXYZPTLK. Mr. An extra-dimensional being that torments Superman for his own amusement, but is generally not portrayed as dangerous. This explains why Superman wouldn't rush out to help the Justice Gang. He knows the creature isn't out to hurt anyone. Superman reveals that Krypto is a foster situation, so that's important to remember. And then there's this great dialogue between Lois and Clark that kind of really embodies the main theme of the movie. Lois says, "We're so different. I was just some punk rock kid from Baker Line, and you're Superman." Superman says, "I'm punk rock." Lois laughs and says, "You are not punk rock." Superman says, "I like the Strange Fellows, the PODs, and the Mighty Crabjoys." Lois says, "Those are pop radio bands. They're not punk rock. The Mighty Crabjoys suck." Superman, "Oh, well, a lot of people love them." Lois says, "My point is I question everything and everyone. You trust everyone and think everyone you've ever met is like beautiful." And Superman says, "Maybe that's the real punk rock." So I assume you have a large swath of the audience that rolls their eyes at that. And that's because, but that's the exact point, is like, we have become, and I'm including myself in this, we've become this jaded, cynical, skeptical society because of what's happened. It's hard not, I mean, it's honestly hard not to. Seeing a lot of the shit, when you peel back the curtain, it's a very Wizard of Oz situation going on. But I think it's important that they took this avenue. And I like that they took that, and they're positioning Superman as punk rock. The fact that he does not take on this predominant worldview of we're fucked and everything sucks and etc. So as Clark mentioned, he's the fan of the fake band, the Mighty Crabjoys. They are not real. You can spot the poster of the band in his room in Smallville. The band appears in other DCU projects in Creature Commandos. Eric Frankenstein wears the Mighty Crabjoys t-shirt. And in Peacemaker, there's a billboard of the band. The Mighty Crabjoys theme plays during the credits, performed by Foxy Shazam with Lulu Saffron. And that's when Clark says, "I love you." And Lois reassures Superman that she believes is good. So she doesn't return the favor, which is always great when you put yourself out there and you don't get it in return. And then it's like, it just eats away at you. What? That didn't happen to me. What? Superman then turns himself in. Ultraman, is basically roughing him up, pushing him around, trying to ragdoll him. Rick Flag Sr., played by Frank Grillo, escorts him, does the perp walk across the street, turns him over to Planet Watch. Flag's perp walk, where he arrests Superman, is 2 blocks away from where Frank Grillo's character arrests Captain America in Captain America the Winter Soldier. They're 2 blocks away in downtown Cleveland. I thought that was an interesting touch. Coincidence or not, I don't know. Seeing the level of detail that James Gunn does here, it wouldn't shock me if he also was like, yeah, this would be a nice little wink. Ultraman forces Superman inside the portal at the beach campgrounds. We see the weird creature who kind of looks like Slender Man piloting a transport and we get that explanation about the pocket universe. That creature is named Mr. Handsome, which I thought was great. Because I mean, I don't mean to objectify this creature, but not a great looking creature. Not what I would traditionally call handsome. But apparently, I did some research. This Lex Luthor created this being when he was 12. So that got a lot of people, the wheels turning with a lot of people saying like, oh, I wonder like, if this Mr. Handsome was Lex's first attempt to create someone. And it was a failure, but I don't know, maybe because Lex created this creature when he was so young that he has that emotional attachment to it, still has a little bit of sentimental value kicking around in that bod and brain of his. And so he keeps him around to serve him. So the artificial pocket universe where Luthor secretly holds his enemies, including Crypto, we get to see Rex Mason, the Element Man, aka Metamorpho, who can morph into any known substance like kryptonite. That comes into play. Back at the Daily Planet, we see that Jimmy's getting phone calls from a source. He says, I'm not going to reveal my source, as Lois presses him on it. But the source is listed in his phone as Mutant Toes, which is, I mean, that's perfect, dude. It's such a great attention to detail. Like when you get a number from a person and you're like, either don't know their exact name, and so I've done that where I don't know the person's name or I forgot it, and so I put in a descriptor, or you do know the person's name and you want to like just reiterate and remind yourself of who that person is to deter you from doing anything that you don't want to do. So very nice touch. Back in the pocket universe, we see the troll monkeys. This is the monkey infinitum theory, where if you get enough monkeys typing away on typewriters, you'll eventually get Shakespeare. And apparently they have gotten to the point where they've done an effective job spreading this hate and negative sentiment against Superman across social media. I love that they have Crypto chasing super squirrels, in this prison. We saw him. He's just, I mean, they really captured the nature of being a dog. I know that sounds stupid, but I mean, how many movies have we seen where the dog's just kind of just there? And it's like, they don't do a whole hell of a lot, and they're not really showing you all the things that a dog can do. This is a movie where it's not just this ancillary character that's like, oh, isn't it cute? It's a dog. The mannerisms, the behavior, like they really nailed it. Rex's baby, Joey, is across the way in a separate cell, and so Luthor ends up using Metamorpho's infant son as leverage to force him to transmute one of his hands into kryptonite, which renders Superman powerless. Jimmy then meets up with his source, who happens to be Lex's girlfriend, Eve. The women, the running gag in this was so good. And this scene is like, you could very easily see this scene being cut for time, but I'm glad they didn't, because it's just nice little touch, and it adds a great amount of humor and value to the movie. Eve says, I thought you wanted to see me, Jimmy. And Jimmy responds with, I do, but Eve, how could I even really see you with Lex still in the picture? And then Eve says, you're just trying to get information out of me. And Jimmy says, I swear to God, that's not it. I just know that if I could get some real dirt on him, then maybe the two of us could, and Eve says, could be together again. And Jimmy Olsen takes a long pause and he goes, yeah. It's just the delivery of the yeah. So good. And then Eve looks happy and then upset. She says, "But you said my toes look like someone spilled shrimp cocktail on the floor." And Jimmy says, "You have unconventional toes. Who cares? There's other parts of you that people would find very attractive." And Eve says, "Lex tortured a dog the other day." And Jimmy goes, "Jesus Christ." And Eve says, "I know." It's just like such good dialogue. At the Hall of Justice, we get that hypno glasses explanation, which I love so much. Guy Gardner says he's of the cloth, which is hilarious. Mr. Terrific reveals that he's got nanites in everyone's blood, which is kind of like, whoa, that seems like some sinister shit. But again, we know, we don't know in this movie, but we know from, I know from doing my research, or if you've read the comics, that he has good intentions. And so that's when it's a little bit shocking for Lois that she's like, everyone's got nanites in their blood. And he's like, yeah, nano GPS trackers that do that to everybody. And so Lois is trying to convince them to break Superman out of this jail. And that's what Guy says it's an implied vow. And the Justice Gang says they're not going to help. But Mr. Terrific changes his mind, catches up with Lois, and says he's down to clown. They go to his garage where the door takes forever to open. I saw this in one of the trailers that was released before the movie, and I was just like, I don't like this gag, but man, in the theater, watching it with everyone else loved it. Lois says, "You have a flying saucer, but you couldn't get a faster garage door." And Mr. Terrific says, "I haven't worked on that yet." I don't like that, but people in the theater loved it, so who am I? In the ship, Mr. Terrific says, "I'm not into people's emotions." It feels like there was reminded me of Dr. Robotnik from Sonic the Hedgehog, where it's like he just, doesn't care about people's feelings or emotions. He cares about end result. But this thing needs to be done, and I don't care how it affects other people, which is kind of in direct conflict with what his motivation is, where he wants to help people. But it does align with the idea that he is logic-based, and you have to remove emotion to have logic. Back in the Pocket Universe prison, we see Gurkos with Lex. That's when Lex presents the Mali, the Indian guy who once sold a falafel to Superman, who Superman likes. I mean, he likes everyone. When he enters the Daily Planet, he mentions the doorman by name, so he makes an effort to connect with and befriend everyone he comes into contact with. And Lex is like, we're trying to get information of Superman, something to that effect, and is using Molly, the Indian guy, the falafel vendor, as almost in a hostage situation. Like, if you don't give me the information, I'm going to blow his head off. And he actually shoots him. That's like a little bit surprising. That's something that you don't, this is a PG-13 movie. It's Superman's for the kids. Like, that's the kind of angle that they're taking. And then to see the villain actually shoot an innocent man was, I don't feel like we've seen that before. And so this is the moment that causes Rex, aka Element Man Metamorpho, to rethink everything and be like, okay, I don't know if I'm down for this. Mr. Terrific and Lois arrive at the beach campgrounds. This scene fucking rocks. So good. The people, I thought it was a really nice touch and a funny choice to have all the workers at this campground at the beach wearing the exact same thing. They're all wearing Hawaiian shirts. They're all wearing khaki shorts. They're all wearing bucket hats. It's like the uniforms. I mean, it's like you could have very easily just put them all in like, I don't know, jeans and t-shirts or khakis, pants, and a normal button down. But like to put them all in Hawaiian shirts and khaki shorts and bucket hats is, I guess it's like to give the appearance that like, oh, we're just a bunch of nerdy scientists doing like nerd shit that's not going to be harmful to anyone. I guess that's the impetus behind that. But this is one of the most badass fight scenes. I would put this up there with the Quicksilver scene in X-Men Days of Future Past. I think that was in that movie. I would put it up there with that. I would put it up there with the one take scene from Guardians of the Galaxy 3, I believe, the No Sleep Till Brooklyn. Like one of the best fight scenes in a superhero movie of all time. It's a great song. Lois is protected by a bubble. Mr. Terrific gets to show off his powers, battling the pack of raptors of the beachside Fort Creamer. It required a 2-minute, 2,000 frame one shot. And, I think Lois summed it up perfectly. Holy shit. It was so good. It turns out that this song, I believe that song, the lyrics are about a couple that are walking through a zoo. And so it's kind of, fits within the context of that scene where it's like it's Mr. Terrific and Lois that are basically like entering a zoo with all the animals and how they're going to get through that. We learn that every time you enter and exit, you risk tearing the fabric of time and space and could turn the portal into a black hole. Cool. Again, raising the stakes. Like, this is not just some portal you can go in and out of ad infinitum, ad nauseum. Like, there are consequences to this. So that's a good element to infuse into this. The ticking time bomb, if you will. And then in prison, Rex decides to not morph. He decides to morph away from the kryptonite, and he says and there's this quote from him to Superman: "Why are you so gross looking?" Because if you've watched the movie, Metamorpho is not like a exactly sexiest man of the year. Mr. Terrific hacks into the portal. He explains the anti-proton river that will tear you apart. The River Pi was described in the script as math gone wild. The T-spheres, who Lois Lane referred to as circles, to me look like miniature soccer balls wearing jockstraps. Element Man is able to create sunlight to power up Soups. They save Rex's baby Joey. Superman, with the baby, busts out Crypto. Element Man, I have this note: Element Man rocks, literally. Like, he's literally made of rocks, and he just is an awesome character that finally got his shine, got the spotlight, and he rocked it, dude. I mean, like, the fact that he's able to do what he does and is so versatile is like, why wasn't he featured more? I haven't seen him, and now it feels like he needs to be a part of more projects moving forward. I love that Crypto attacks the T-spheres. So again, it's like you see him at the beginning, and he's like roughhousing with Superman. Superman wants Crypto to save him, and Crypto's like snapping at him and biting him and playing rough. And Superman, it pisses him off, and you're saying to yourself, how does Superman not have control over his dog? Like, this is not a puppy. This is a grown dog. How is he not like taught this dog obedience, right? So you got that cooking in your brain, like, what? And so we know that it's not a as James Gunn mentioned, not so good boy. It's like it's chasing squirrels. It's chasing T-spheres. It's a dog chasing its own tail. Chasing the post, the UPS truck, the postman. Like, it's just a dog that it wants to play and plays rough. And so, it's such a nice touch that it's attacking the T-spheres. And that is a setup. They have been setting up Crypto this whole time for a great payoff at the end. We get to see Superman's powerful breath. I love that, throughout that sequence, Metamorpho is doing all kinds of crazy shit with his body, like turning into all kinds of different things and elements. And then Metamorpho sees these things that we have been accustomed to for decades because we know Superman, but it's all new to Rex, and he's like, man, you are so weird. Lois Lane. So Mr. Terrific's T-sphere finds Superman with Crypto, Metamorpho, and Baby Joe in the Pocket Universe. Lois Lane says, do you have them? And Mr. Terrific says, them. Superman, a mean dog in a cape, a weird baby, and a squiggle man. They all just make it back out as the portal closes. That's when Superman says there are more prisoners. We got to go back and get them. but there's kryptonite poisoning. I love that they're getting the spaceship, and Mr. Terrific says the controls are easy and intuitive. At Luthor Core, Lex is pissed. He's abusive to Eve, and that's when Eve decides to end things with Lex and turn him into Jimmy. So all the... she says, I'm so done. Everything to ruin Lex forever. And so she sends all her selfies to Jimmy, which Jimmy does not pick up on at first. Meanwhile, Lois takes Clark to Kansas in the T-Craft with the easy intuitive controls. And we get to know Clark's parents better. John Kent, the dad, is just a big old mush, and Lois finds out that Jimmy's source is Eve, and he's like, "How do you do it?" And she's like, "How do you do it, Jimmy?" And Lois picks up on the selfies because Jimmy's like, yeah, she just sent me like a bunch of selfies, and it's just like, this is not what we need. And then Lois sees that each selfie is revealing parts of Lex's plan, which I thought was a great touch. Lois says, your hot ex is a genius to Jimmy, and Jimmy goes, hot? They're just like, Jimmy, you don't even know what you have. Lex is losing it. He tries to reopen the portal. It causes a dimensional rift. We get to see back at the Kents in Kansas, Crypto laying on Superman, wagging his tail. I just think that they wrote the dog perfectly. The dad talk to Clark. I love that he calls Lois Lane Luann. It's such a Kansas thing, right? And then these quotes. I mean, John Kent does not have a lot of quotes in this movie, but the quotes he has are probably the best. We always remember, what Kal-El's birth dad said to him. And there are some nice scenes with Pa Kent in previous Superman movies, but these quotes are just really hit you hard. Parents aren't for telling their children who they're supposed to be. We are here to give you all tools to help you make fools of yourselves all on your own. Very true. And then he says, your choices, Clark, your actions. That's what makes you who you are. I'll tell you something, son. I couldn't be more proud of you. Could Clark have asked for better parents? Oh boy, he got lucky. And if say another random couple, like just the fortune and the luck of the earth in this world, where it's like, if someone else discovers him, we'd be in a heap load of trouble, I think. But he got like the best possible parents out there. I love that, the mom interrupts and says there's something on the box you might want to see. I mean, it's just like they really nailed the Midwestern rural parents so well. So we see that Bravia is invading Jaunpur. We go to On Location at the border between Bravia and Jaunpur, where a little kid raises the Superman flag. We got the iconic Superman theme music, which really gave me chills and goosebumps. Back in Kansas, the mom says, I cleaned your boots. It's like such a mom thing to do. And there's also some people speculating that, I guess in the comics and in some TV shows, it's been explicitly stated that Ma Kent, or Martha Kent, made Superman's costume, which is like such a nice touch. And so there's a slight implication here that I cleaned your boots is meaning that she also made the costume here in this here project. There's a mandatory evacuation in Metropolis. This is where we get to see that the license plate in Metropolis say Delaware, but are fashioned to resemble the state license plates of Ohio. Delaware was established as Metropolis's state in the 1990 DC Comics role-playing game, and later used as its state in the comics. The license plates were made to resemble Ohio's design because many of the Metropolis scenes were shot in Cleveland. We also get to see that as people are evacuating, you get to see the exit for Gotham. So Gotham City is close, which is makes sense. And I love that it's just a slight nice little Easter egg teaser for what's coming down the pike. Yeah, I had a note here. Cat Grant's boobs, dude. It's just on full on display. My God. Superman shows up and saves a woman in a car. Mr. Terrific and Superman get tackled into a baseball stadium where the Meteors, the Metropolis Meteors, play. This was actually Progressive Field in Cleveland. I originally thought it was Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles, which I think is a callback to. I don't think that was Man of Steel. I think that was Superman Returns when they were in the Dodger Stadium. Ultraman and the Engineer are taking on Mr. Terrific and Superman in the baseball stadium. There's a nice blend of CGI and practical effects here. They fill Superman's lungs with nanites. Yuck, that was gross to watch. And this is where we get to see the full extent of Superman's powers, that he can fly into space. You have everyone saying that he should have suffocated by now. They end up crashing back to Earth, and this is where Superman is pulling the nanites out of his mouth like a magician with a handkerchief. You know, when the magician does that whole trick where he's pulling like a never-ending handkerchief or fabric out of his mouth. That's what that looked like. That also felt very Matrixy. This is the second time that Superman has been shown vomiting. Did you know? This is the first time. The first time was in an animated film, Superman Doomsday, which came out in 2007. The Engineer is knocked unconscious. They call in the Raptors. Lex calls in the Raptors, and this is where we have the big reveal. Ultraman. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Ultraman is revealed to be Superman's clone. So I had this spoiled for me a long time ago. I mean, it was like the moment that they posted, I don't know if they officially posted or publicly posted it or if it was a leak, but it was like from the set, and it shows a picture of Ultraman escorting Superman into wherever, courthouse, Planet Watch, across the street, and everyone's like, huh, similar build, similar size, huh? And I was just like, oh. So it was ruined for me a long time ago. Not that it didn't make it worse. It just would have been nice to kind of keep that under wraps a little bit better. Ultraman can't talk, and so he has a speaker on his suit. And because he doesn't talk, he's easier to control. He's stronger than Superman, and that's where we're reminded that Ultraman and Superman fight while the Justice Gang shows up in Jahanpur. Guy Gardner, the Green Lantern, makes his powers look so easy. I love that he's just waving away tanks, like massive objects. He's just shooing them away with his hand, just a little flick of the hand gesture. I love that they incorporated the middle finger. That was a nice touch. I don't know that you would see that in a lot of previous projects, especially PG-13. We see Element Man drop the hammer on a tank, which was awesome. And we also saw Hawkgirl killing the president of Baravia, Vasil Gurkos. I know you won't kill me. You are too delicate and weak like Superman. Hawkgirl, I'm not like Superman. Immediately drops him to his death. And, you know, in the moment, you're like, whoa, okay, damn. Should she be part of the Justice Gang? What's her deal? What's going on? But in doing the research and finding out more about her, yeah, that makes total sense. Like, I don't think she does not value life to the extent that Superman would, because she's been reincarnated so many damn times. You know, that's a running theme with a lot of stories that tackle mortality and immortality. You know, think about Dracula or even Wolverine. People that just keep on living and keep on living and keep on living, they become less human because it's like they're not encumbered by the threat of death or things coming to an end. It's just like, this is just going to keep going on and on and on. And I guess they get bored, or at least cold to the idea of life, because it's like, oh, I'm going to live forever. Why do I care? I can't relate. Jimmy posts a story about Lex. This is where Lex makes his reveal. He says, I think you overestimate the importance of Jarhanpur to me, Superman. That was just a bonus. I'm not killing you so the Baravian military conflict can proceed. I created the Baravian military conflict so I'd have an excuse to kill you. Once you involved yourself, I knew I could easily get our government's support in nullifying you. Superman, why? Lex Luthor, because you're destroying us. I didn't fully understand that quote. I think initially on the surface level, you're supposed to take that as truly does believe that Superman is here to conquer the planet, which I don't think in retrospect, I don't think he truly believes that. From what I've learned through watching videos and reading articles is he says you're destroying us because he thinks that Superman is placating the citizens of Earth, Earthlings, that we don't feel the need to advance and evolve, because why advance and evolve when there's an alien like Superman who can just keep us protected and safe? And so why try, essentially? Like, we're not going to grow or advance or get better because Superman's here. We can just rely on Superman. And so Lex doesn't like people depending on Superman. And so he wants Superman out of the equation so that he can push people to be better. And that was the gist that I got from that. I guess I buy that. We also have a great talk about envy. Superman says, "You're driven by envy, Luthor. You couldn't be more obvious." Lex says, "No shit. I'm not dim." I love that he says, "I'm not dim." He didn't say, "I'm not dumb." He said, "I'm not dim." Such a great word. "I'm aware envy consumes every waking moment." 13L. So he's still calling out, directives and commands to the Ultraman. Ultraman blasts Superman in the eyes with his lasers. Lex Luthor says, "I know when they mention Galileo or Einstein or one of these other twits," again, great word, "in the same breath as me, I feel a tide of vomit burn the back of my throat. But at least Galileo did something. He wasn't some dopey Venusian catapulted onto this planet just to have the world fawn over him, because his strength illuminates how weak we all really are. So my envy is a Colin. It is the sole hope for humanity, because it is what has driven me to annihilating you. 1A, 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 1A. And of course, 1A is direct punch to face, which is so perfect, so fitting. That's immediately, that's the human instinct. It's like, go back to, which is ironic, but like, go back to any time that you've had a conflict where you really want to inflict pain on someone, punch to the face. So it's always like, that is 1A in the list of list of options that we always go through in the Rolodex, in the catalog of moves and maneuvers. Superman whistles for Krypto. This is a great payoff to the setup that we saw in the beginning of the movie when Superman's down and out and he is bloodied and battered and on the ground in the snow, and he just whistles, and then Krypto comes, and so he whistles in this moment, and Krypto comes to his aid, tackles the drones that control Ultraman. Another great payoff to the setup that we had when he was chasing squirrels in the prison, when he attacked the T-spheres when they came out of the portal. It's like, this is it's just so good. That's when the Raptors arrive, and we really get to see the full breadth of Superman's powers, where he's twirling and he has the laser eyes. Very cool. I always wondered, like, the laser eyes thing feels like that should. How is that not Superman's 1A? It just feels like, just use that shit all the time. You wouldn't have to lift a finger, but I guess he has to reserve it for only really critical situations. There is a close-up of the S, which again is a reminder of, the conflict that Superman has, where he thought it was a symbol of hope, but it actually ends up being a symbol of despair for the human race. He ends up dislocating his shoulder, which is something that we have not really seen in any Superman projects that I'm familiar with, at least on the film level, where it's like, this feels like a human injury. Like, what? Superman can dislocate his shoulder? It's like, yeah, he can. He's still a living creature, organism. And so he dislocates his shoulder, puts it back in, and flings Ultraman into a falling bus that takes him into the black hole. Again, that would have been interesting if you just had Guy Gardner. Yeah, he's in Jahanpur at that point, but it would have been interesting if they have, because of his backstory, if Guy Gardner sees that happen and is like, ooh, been there. Mr. Terrific says, hey, this ain't playtime. Quit messing around. We have to get to Luthor to stop the rift. And Superman says, I'm not messing around. I'm doing important stuff. I love it. Again, I think there's a large contingency of people out there that are not fans of this version of Superman, but I love it. I love that he truly embodies like a person that just wants to do good and be good and feel good, and he still is a little bit of a kid in his view of the world and his view of, I mean, how many people in that situation would lash out and attack Mr. Terrific verbally for that, and he's just like, I'm not messing around, I'm doing important stuff. Like he knows what he's doing is good, and he just wishes that other people would appreciate that. Crypto then carries Mr. Terrific, and Mr. Terrific has a dynamite quote, I don't need your help, I'm goddamn Mr. Terrific. Mr. Terrific had dynamite drop-ins and sound bites in this movie. This speech from Lex is great. This whole and it's tough. I know people are kind of might be over like the monologue and the final, I think you've seen a lot of directors and producers and creators kind of shy away from that because they feel like it's preachy or pretentious or whatever. This one, I don't mind. Like, so you start with Lex saying, you piece of shit alien. And Superman responding with, that is where you've always been wrong about me, Lex. I am as human as anyone. I love, I get scared. I wake up every morning, and despite not knowing what to do, I put one foot in front of the other, and I try to make the best choices that I can. I screw up all the time, but that is being human, and that's my greatest strength. And someday, I hope for the sake of the world, you understand that it's yours too. And Lex says, oh, that's beautiful, but none of this matters, you patronizing clown. The government gave me authority to kill you. If not today, then... And then he gets attacked by Crypto. Being human is his greatest strength, which is true. To not succumb to hatred and violence it takes a tremendous amount of strength that I'll be the first to admit I've lacked over the course of my time on Earth. It's just like I am envious. I am like Lex in a lot of ways, and being jealous and envious of people that are able to rein it in, hone it in, and turn it into something positive and turn it into something good, and to being human, and to feeling not succumbing to, it's easy to be the heel, right? It's harder to be the baby face, to use wrestling parlance. So Mr. Terrific restores the rift, and then Cat Grant's boobs just bouncing up and down on that stupid spacecraft, dude. I just cannot. I don't know how you can't notice that. And I know that makes me a perv and a creep, and I know Superman would never call that out. I'm not Superman. Although, I did get called Clark Kent. I had Homoglow come to the apartment to clean it up. By the way, fuck Homoglow. It's not a rip-off. It's not necessarily a scam. It's just like, it's a little shady. Like, it's not $19 to clean my apartment. It's $19 plus this and a fee and a service and a subscription, and you can't get out of it and you can't cancel it. And it's just minimum 6 month, it's a lot of stuff that's in the fine print that you have to pause and actually read to understand it better. So screw Homoglow. The cleaners that come here are amazing and deserve all the money, but it's just, it's a bit misleading, this Homoglow service. Anyway, the cleaner comes, I open the door, I'm wearing my glasses. So if you're watching the video, I have my glasses on, like this. He goes, oh my God, you Clark Kent? So, I am not a handsome person. That's been well established, but I can be confused for Clark Kent, which is not so bad. So no, I am not Clark Kent. I'm not Superman. Spoiler. And so I do notice when a very attractive woman's breasts are bouncing up and down on a spacecraft. I mean, it was like every time she's on screen, it's like, let's make sure we get the boobs. Let's make sure we get the boobs. That had to be a conversation with James Gunn being like, I think the 13-year-olds will appreciate this. 13-year-olds and grown-ass men, middle-aged men in a midlife crisis who have reverted to being 13-year-olds like me. And I thank you, Mr. Gunn. Much appreciated. And thank you to Michaela Hoover for signing up for that, knowing that you have pervs and creeps like me that are just like, cannot get over it. You know how like Superman uses his parents' message at the beginning of the film to soothe him? Like, that's very soothing to me. It lets me know that, like, okay, it's okay to be a dude and just appreciate some nice boobs. There's the news report that Lex Luthor was aligning with Bravia. Lex Luthor is then in tears. John Harper celebrates as Justice Gang fends off Bravia. I love this little piece of back and forth dialogue. Hawkgirl says, that was sick. Guy, maybe he should join the group, referencing Metamorpho. Guy Gardner scoffs, says, please. I mean, no offense, but that creepy mug is what you want representing the Justice Gang. And Metamorpho says, Justice Gang? That's a cool name. And Guy Gardner says, you're in. Then you have Rick Flag talking about the threat of metahumans. Lex Luthor's ex-girlfriend, who is also imprisoned. So not just Eve, but his other ex-girlfriend who looked a lot like Eve. You know, all the people are freed, right? The prisoners are freed from the pocket dimension where Lex was keeping them. And his ex, who we see briefly in a bunch of previous scenes, they actually, when they show the prisoners being released, that woman is tall as hell. My word. Lex is taken into custody. The troll monkeys are released. Eve hugs Jimmy, and Jimmy's like a little weary about that. And then Superman says to Lois, would you like to do that interview now? And so Lois is like, okay. And so they find a private place in the mall. It looks like a mall. And so they share a kiss and levitate as they share a kiss, which is also a nice touch. It's the power of love. And then Lois finally hits him with the I love you too. Something that I never got when I put myself out there recently. Oh. And I was like, you don't have to say it, but I would hope eventually down the road, before I kick it, you hit me with it. Perry asks Jimmy, how long have those two been hooking up? And Jimmy says about 3 months. So I wonder how that corresponds with the, let me see, to the on-screen text, because 3 months ago, remember that? No, it would be Hyun. There was no 3 months ago. Ah, interesting. Because it was 3 centuries ago, 3 decades ago, 3 years ago, 3 weeks ago. Interesting. So there was a period, so they've been together and hooking up 3 months. So there was a span between 3 years ago and 3 months ago where Superman is out there doing his thing. And so maybe that makes more sense now that Lois isn't as skittish about, Clark also being, or Superman being Clark Kent. All right. Home stretch, people. One of the robots suggests that Superman look at photos and home videos of his parents to help him relax, to which he agrees. And then, instead of his birth parents and the message that he's been playing to soothe him, from the beginning of the movie, we get photos and videos of his adoptive parents, Jonathan and Martha Kent, shown doting upon him as he grows up from a baby onward. This shows that he sees Jonathan and Martha as his true parents, despite being an alien, despite his biological parents sending him to Earth to rule and control humanity. Clark learns humanity, love, and what it means to be a good person from Jonathan and Martha. And he wholeheartedly embodies those values. So that was a really nice touch. That brought a little tear to my eye. Not gonna lie. And then we get this. So this is another spoiler. Gary, formerly known as Robot 4, says, "Sir, I think your cousin has returned." Superman says, "Yep." And that's when we see Kara Zor-El, a.k.a. Supergirl, played by Millie Alcock from House of Dragon. I don't know that I'm like too high on Millie Alcock being Supergirl. I was actually really looking forward to the Supergirl who was portrayed in The Flash, Sasha Kaye, who I really liked. I really liked her portrayal of Supergirl in The Flash, and I was hoping that they would stay with her for this one, and they went with Millie Alcock instead. Which, I don't know. I guess it makes sense when you think about what James Gunn is trying to accomplish here and like separate the DCU from the DCEU for the most part and not confuse fans. So Kara Zor-El, aka Supergirl, played by Millie Alcock from House of Dragon, says, "What the hell, dude? Why'd you move the door?" Superman says, "I didn't move the door." And Kara says, "And where is my dog?" And that's when you see Krypto fly and pounce on Kara as she laughs. And Superman says, "Okay, well, this is why he has behavioral issues." And Gary the robot says, "No boundaries." And then Krypto keeps playing aggressively with Kara as she keeps laughing. And Gary says, "It's not healthy, is it?" And Superman says, "Mm-hmm. Mm-mm." Kara Zor-El stumbles out of the she's drunk, by the way, throughout this. And so she's stumbling out of the Fortress of Solitude with Krypto, and she goes, "Thanks for watching him, bitch." And so that's when we find out that she likes to party on other planets with red suns, which allow her to get drunk because she wouldn't be able to get drunk if there's a yellow sun present. And why does she like to party and why does she like to get drunk? Woo. Well, the backstory on her, which we'll get into when we talk about Supergirl, which is the next movie to come out. Kal-El is not, Superman's not the only survivor from the Krypton explosion. Apparently, the initial explosion separated a city where Kara Zor-El, his cousin, lived into its own floating situation. So I guess she was stuck in time. Time moved very slowly. So she was a teen. But I gotta get this right. Superman was a baby when Krypton exploded, sent to Earth. Krypton exploded. Kara was a teen when Krypton initially exploded. She then was had to watch everyone on the kind of smaller chunk of Krypton that was still operational after the larger planet was blown to pieces. One of the pieces that was still floating through space still had Kryptons, but they all got Kryptonian poisoning or something like that, and they were dying, so she had to watch her mom die in front of her. She watched all her loved ones die, and then I guess she was stuck in space for a very long amount of time with nothing going on, and just having to relive. And think about being stuck. Like if you were a prisoner, you were put in the hole. Like what do they call it? Isolation, solitude, where it's like you ain't got nothing but your thoughts, dude. And so for her to relive the trauma over and over again through an extensive period of time, the drinking will help her forget or move on or process the grief of which so she's experienced a hell of a lot more trauma than her cousin Superman. And then we get the song Punk Rocker by Teddy Bears featuring Iggy Pop with the lyrics, "I'm a punk rocker, yes I am." At the end of the film, it's a callback to the argument between Clark and Lois in her apartment over who is more punk rock. We also got a mid-credit scene with Krypto hugging Superman, which was a nice little touch, similar to when Eagly hugged Peacemaker in season 1. So the box office returns for Superman 2025. Had a net production budget of about $225 million. According to Variety, the film is expected to earn a theatrical profit of approximately $125 million, so not too great. By the end of July, Superman became the first DC film since The Batman in 2022 to earn over $300 million domestically. In late August, it became the first DC film, also since The Batman, to earn $600 million globally. As of yesterday, November 14th, it's the third highest grossing box office release domestically in 2025, just behind a Minecraft movie at number 1 and Lilo and Stitch at number 2. It passed by Jurassic World, Rebirth, Sinners, Fantastic Four First Steps, which is huge, How to Train Your Dragon, Captain America Brave New World, Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, and Thunderbolts. Worldwide, it is the eighth highest grossing box office release, behind Ninja 2, Lilo and Stitch, Minecraft movie, Jurassic World, Rebirth, Demon Slayer, How to Train Your Dragon, F1 the movie, and right above Mission Impossible Final Reckoning and Fantastic Four First Steps, which is really interesting. But that shows you the appeal of Formula One around the world, not so much domestically, but 70% of its gross came from international receipts. For comparison, so how does Superman 2025 compare to the other Superman movies? Superman 2025, not quite at the level of a Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice, or Man of Steel, or Superman, but about on par with Superman 2, which is not too bad. Critical reception, Metacritic assigned the film a score of 68 out of 100 based on 58 critics, generally favorable reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A-, same as Man of Steel. Those surveyed by PostTrack gave it an 86% positive score, and 74% said they would definitely recommend it. I agree, I would definitely recommend it. And the critics' consensus on Rotten Tomatoes: pulling off the heroic feat of fleshing out a dynamic new world while putting its champion's big, beating heart front and center, this Superman flies high as a man of tomorrow grounded in the here and now. The audience consensus on Rotten Tomatoes says James Gunn brings back a timeless hero with Superman and gifts us a four-legged scene stealer we can all rally behind. Agreed. So, how do the ratings compare for Superman 2025 to the other Superman films? Superman 2025 has a 7.1 out of 10 on IMDb. I gave it an 8. It's a low 8, not a high 7 for me. 83% of all critics gave it a favorable review on Rotten Tomatoes. 71% of top critics gave it a favorable review. 90% of verified audience members gave it a favorable review. 86% of all audiences gave it a favorable review. 4.5 out of 5 from verified audience, which is a 9 out of 10. 4.3 out of 5 from all audience members. That's an 8.6 out of 10. So I am just below that. I'm like an 8.1 to 8.4 out of 10 for Superman 2025. But I mean, it's just getting better and better as time goes on. I appreciate this movie more and more, just knowing the level of thought that went into it. So I think, like, critically, Superman 2025 is not as well liked by critics as Superman or Superman 2, but better liked than Superman Returns and Man of Steel. So it's like the third best reviewed by critics, with Superman Returns being a close, top critics liked Superman Returns better than Superman 2025. And then audiences, this is the most well-reviewed Superman film from audiences since Superman. The Orig. The property's in good hands. Yeah, so it's one of the best reviewed by critics. I think critics have really, if this movie came out, the same exact movie comes out in the same year as Man of Steel in 2013 or in 2006, I think the ratings would be higher. But I think it's just having seen so many Superman films, the critics might have fatigue, possibly. Audiences, not so much. Anyway, that's Superman. And next up will be Peacemaker Season 2. Dive into that. And then after that, Fantastic Four, First Steps, and then after that, I saw Predator Badlands, so I'd like to do a Predator Badlands review. Also hoping to see The Running Man at some point in the next week, review of that. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Adios, muchachos.